From Monday's municipal election races to the status of the strike by Alberta teachers and the outcome of the Wyant investigation. Time now for tonight's politics panel. And joining us this evening, Kerr, freelance writer and editor, longtime Alberta print journalist, and Rob Breakenridge is a broadcaster, columnist, and host of the Line Alberta podcast. Good evening to you both, and let's begin with Monday's municipal elections and the outcome specifically of the mayoral race in Calgary.
Thank you to everyone who believed in me, who gave your time, your voice, and your trust. Thank you. Thank you to the Calgarians who stepped up to be heard. We know, I know, that you want the best for our city.
Jeremy Farkas, who ran as an independent, is unofficially mayor, with Elections Calgary putting him ahead of Community's first candidate, Sonia Sharp, by fewer than 600 votes. He also unseats incumbent Mayor Jyoti Gondek, who finishes third. Now, up the highway in Edmonton, Andrew Knack out front with nearly 38% of the vote when ballot counting resumed this morning, narrowly leading fellow former councillor Tim Cartmel. Rob, I'll start with you on the Calgary front. What does the ever so close outcome of Jeremy Farkas over Sonia Sharp say to you about this mayoral race as a whole?
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see. I mean, this is likely headed to a recount, just given how close it was. But yeah, I mean, it's, you know, we're sort of seeing even across the board as the ward results come in that there is a bit of a shift to the right here. And, you know, even though Jyoti Gondek as an incumbent was facing a few conservative challengers, she certainly did not benefit from any kind of vote splitting, really. I mean, the race came down to two more or less right-of-center candidates. So it was quite a rejection, I think, of Gondek and her legacy, and I think of sort of the progressivism that had come to define this last term of city council. I think the one big policy achievement you look at the last city council, you know, the blanket rezoning and the housing debate that was so intense, that looks as though that's going to be a target. Jeremy Farkas campaigned hard against it, as did many of these city council candidates. So it is going to be interesting to see that shift to the right. But at the same time, you know, Jeremy Farkas with just over 90,000 votes when there were over, you know, 348,000 votes for mayor. It's not exactly a resounding victory and a big mandate for him either. So what does he learn from his time on council, from his defeat 4 years ago, his time away from office, about how to approach this and how to find consensus with others on council? Because, you know, he's laid out an ambitious agenda of what he wants to do, but, you know, getting that done as mayor is another story.
Kathy, surprised by Jyoti Gondek's finish? What do you take away from the outcome in Calgary?
I'm not that surprised. I mean, certainly she has been a controversial mayor down there, and I think the fact that she ran a fairly convincingly third place sort of held true for what people were expecting to see. I think there really was an urge for a change going on in Calgary, and that's where this is coming from.
Rob, long waits to vote at a number of polling stations in both cities, a lot of waiting as well for results, especially in Edmonton. And this wasn't because of high turnout, because in Edmonton's case, preliminary numbers barely cracked 30%. Where do you think this year's municipal elections will leave many voters?
Yeah, and I mean, the turnout in Calgary looks as though it's going to be fairly low too. You know, despite the fact that I think Calgarians were engaged on a lot of these issues, blanket rezoning I mentioned, you know, public safety, these kinds of issues seem to galvanize the public. But when it came to voting, we didn't see the kind of turnout we might have expected. I do wonder, and it's impossible maybe to know for sure, how many people were discouraged from voting, having, you know, waited in line or getting to the polling station and seeing those lines. And that's difficult to quantify, so we may never really know what turnout could have possibly been. It was interesting to see, you know, the amount of votes they were able to count in Calgary versus Edmonton. Seems like maybe there were more problems in Edmonton, sort of a combination maybe of these rule changes being imposed by the provincial government on Edmonton and Calgary and on municipalities more generally, but also maybe these two cities and Edmonton more so perhaps not being prepared as they should have been to deal with all of this. So yeah, a lot of frustration in the lineups, the wait times to vote, all the different steps people had to go through. And then just the delay in knowing the results and why this has to take so long. I mean, that does speak to banning these tabulators and forcing hand counts.
Kathy, municipalities had considerable lead-up time, as the province has pointed out, to prepare for the new rules the government imposed, including hand counting of ballots. How do you weigh frustrations? Was this just part of municipalities approaching the learning curve?
Well, I think it certainly was a learning curve, and I have to say I'm kind of surprised by the province coming back and saying, well, it's a municipality's fault when they made the changes that actually created the problem. I mean, it's just like, yeah, you're on your own here, and you can figure it out. I know here in Edmonton there were some comments from the city that they were having some serious problems staffing, and that's certainly what I saw at my polling station. Only 3 people. They could easily have used another 2 or 3 to speed things up a bit. So there's a multiplicity of issues here. Theoretically, the next time around, it will be easier. But there was a lot of extra paperwork, and I just think that's going to slow things down, and it requires more hands on deck.
Yeah, and some cramped hands at polling stations. Okay, next up, the ongoing strike by Alberta teachers and an air of uncertainty around the prospect of back-to-work legislation.
I'm not going to wade into hypothetical waters at the moment. Again, if necessary, we'll do what is required to get kids back in the classroom. But for the moment, I wouldn't have anything else to comment on it.
The legislature is set to return with Thursday's speech from the throne. Last week, the Premier said teachers can expect back-to-work legislation soon because the strike is causing irreparable harm to students. Now, Kathy, we heard perspective from teacher and former ATA lead negotiator Peter MacKay off the top. What's your read on why talks between the two sides just don't appear to be going anywhere?
I think the province taking that question of class size, the pupil-teacher ratio off the table has really become the flashpoint here. And I think it's one of those things. It's mystifying why they don't want that even discussed. There's one thing to say that it's more complicated than that, but surely you can at least have a discussion about that. So it's one of those things that's created the impasse, and of course it's hardening the position on the teacher's side. So this is a situation where initially things didn't look that bad when they started negotiating, and they seem to have deteriorated significantly. Part of it is, of course, the teachers themselves have been rejecting a tentative decision. So this is becoming a really hardened issue, and if they are legislated back, I think it's going to get even harder. It's going to cause a lot of resentment, and that's going to spill over generally, I think, even into classrooms.
Rob, whether it's another massive rally on the ledge grounds Thursday during the speech from the throne or anticipated back-to-work legislation, how much of a turning point do you expect the fall sitting to be in what transpires with this strike by teachers?
Yeah, a lot's going to happen over the next week here, and it's kind of a calculation for teachers. I mean, what could you get right now in terms of an offer versus what might happen if you're ordered back to work and you either have a contract imposed or there's some binding arbitration or some of the way that the province sees to resolve this, because it's coming to a head one way or the other. I mean, sure, there's polling that suggests that the public is more or less on the teacher's side or more sympathetic to their arguments, but it kind of becomes a moot point if the province plays that card. And I think the Alberta government is banking on the fact that, whenever Albertans go to the polls the next time, that maybe a lot of this will have blown over. But it doesn't resolve these underlying issues. I think part of the challenge, and even the teachers need to concede it, it's not just about having enough teachers or having enough staff. You got to have enough buildings. You got to have enough schools. And that's kind of almost more of an infrastructure issue. It's hard to work that into a collective bargaining agreement. But if you don't have the buildings, to accommodate all of these students, how are you really going to address that teacher to student ratio? And you can't really send students from Edmonton or Calgary into rural areas, to try to balance that student to teacher ratio. But you can't build new schools overnight either. So it's a real challenge.
All right, we have to jump to a break. But when we come back, the outcome of a former Manitoba judge's investigation into contentious Alberta healthcare contracts. More from our politics panel in a moment. Welcome back. Friday saw the release of the Wyant report into contentious Alberta Health Services contracts and the Premier committing to immediate reforms in procurement processes.
This confirmed I think, the fact that we needed to move in this direction, that AHS had bad practices.
The Premier is insulting the intelligence of Albertans when she tries to claim that the report is saying something that it doesn't.
Responses to the release of a 43-page independent investigation by former Manitoba judge Raymond Wyant that looked into allegations of corruption involving multi-million-dollar contracts for children's pain meds and surgeries by for-profit providers. Wyant found that 2 senior AHS staff members had real or perceived conflicts of interest, but no wrongdoing on the part of elected officials. Now, Rob, you had a column on this in the Calgary Herald today. To what degree do you consider the Wyant report vindication for the Smith government?
Well, they're certainly claiming it as such. Whether it actually is, I think, is another story. And I mean, Judge Wyant even concedes that he's really not in a position to be the final word on all of this, given some of the limitations around his mandate. The fact that he wasn't able to compel people to talk to him, and he references that there were those who took the opportunity to decline that invitation. On top of some of the scope limit or the parameter limits in what he was able to get into. So I think given the fact that he uncovers some real issues here, and what he uncovered, I think just raises further questions. Now, in fairness, maybe the Auditor General might have something to contribute to all of this once we see that report. But I do think it strengthens the case for a public inquiry here, a situation where people wouldn't have a choice about whether to answer questions around all of this. So I think the government would like to move on. Whether they get their way, I guess, remains to be seen.
Well, Kathy, how fulsome, how comprehensive an investigation do you feel Albertans should consider this to have been?
I don't think it is that clear of indication, and I don't think that it is a particularly fulsome inquiry. I think he made some incredibly interesting points. He really got to the nitty-gritty detail down on the ground. But the further up the line questions about who was reporting to who was watching what was going on, who was protecting taxpayer interest. Is that the job of Alberta Health Services? Is that the job of the cabinet? What was the health minister doing in all of this? There's a lot of this that we just don't know, and there's questions to be asked here about oversight. There were practices in place which we know were flouted. Why didn't somebody somewhere along the way go, some of this doesn't look right. There's just some additions here that don't look right. And why, at some point, didn't the political masters in all of this have some oversight and take some responsibility? You could see that in some of the Premier's refusal to really answer that question about whether she feels responsible at all for any of this debacle. I'd like to see some of that debate about political oversight, political responsibility in all of this. And that's not what Wyant was tasked to do. He never spoke to any politicians. That would be an interesting question to have answered.
Rob, on that point of clarity, you brought up the AG's investigation. What about, though, the wrongful dismissal case of former AHS CEO Athena Mentzelopoulos? Could that yet be a factor in this whole discussion?
Yeah, I think so. And you saw her statement last week, and she thinks that this report kind of vindicates a lot of what she was saying, that there were clearly issues at play here. And she says that she was looking into those. And of course, she argues or maintains that, she was just days away from presenting her findings to the Auditor General when she was fired. So, I mean, this report doesn't really clear up some of those questions that she's raised. The report doesn't get into some of the other related issues, like the controversy around the Oilers playoff tickets to cabinet ministers and government staffers. So there are elements of this story that we still need answers on, and we don't get it from this report. So the AG's investigation could be one avenue. We do understand maybe the RCMP has been looking into this. I don't know what might come of that. And you're right, yeah, the wrongful dismissal lawsuit, which really is what kind of started all of this, right? Because not just that there were problems at AHS, she alleged, but that there was some political pressure from above that was driving a lot of this. So that's still another unanswered question or open question, I think, around all of this.
Kathy, last 30 seconds to you. This all rolled out on a Friday. The government's messaging out there now. Is it already falling off the radar of Albertans, soon to be replaced with whatever evolves in the fall sitting?
Well, exactly, and that's part of the issue here. Of course, we have a municipal election, decisions are dropped, and then we have the legislature starting on Thursday, and there will be a giant rally at the. It's this constant the activity never changes, never stops, never slows down, and gives the voter a chance to really take a look and say, but what's really going on here on these specific issues and some very important issues. So yes, I think that it's going to get overtaken. This particular report is going to get overtaken by event, but there are more shoes to drop on it. The Auditor General, the further political fallout still to come here.
Indeed, indeed. Okay, we have to leave it there for time. Great to see you both. Thank you.
Thank you.